Hello everyone! In this video we're going to tackle dividing fractions. At first it might look tricky, but there's a simple rule that makes it straightforward. And once you understand it, you'll see why dividing fractions can be fun, not scary. Dividing fractions is like asking how many of these parts fit into that. The easy shortcut is called keep, change, flip. The first part, keep, we keep the first fraction as it is. The second step, change, we change the division sign to multiplication. And finally, flip. Flip the second fraction, also called taking the reciprocal. Then we multiply like we already learned in the previous video. Let's consider 3/4 divided by 1/2. First step is to keep the first fraction as is. Second is change the division sign to multiplication. And then finally, flip the second fraction. So we have 3/4 times 2/1. We multiply the top and multiply the bottom. 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 1 is 4. So this is the same thing as 6/4. Since 6 and 4 do have a 2 in common, we can reduce this to 3/2. Let's consider 5/6 divided by 5/3. We keep the first fraction, change division sign to a multiplication, and flip the second fraction. So this is the same thing as 5/6 times 3/5. Then we can multiply the top, multiply the bottom. 5 times 3 is 15, and 6 times 5 is 30. So now we have 15/30, which is the same thing as 1/2. Next, let's look at 2 divided by 1/3. We do keep the first fraction as is. However, I will go ahead and write 2 as 2/1. Change the division sign to multiplication, and then flip the second fraction. So we have 2/1 times 3/1. 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 times 1 is 1, so this is 6/1, or 6. Notice how turning division into multiplication makes the process much easier. Watch out for these common mistakes. 1, flipping the first fraction instead of the second. Remember, only the second fraction gets flipped. Next, forgetting to multiply after flipping. Some students flip and then leave it as a division, but make sure you always change that division sign to a multiplication sign. And finally, leaving answers unsimplified. Always check if your fraction can be reduced or written as a mixed number. Let's try this one. 1/2 divided by 2/1. We'll start with the keep, change, flip. Keeping the first fraction gives me 1/2 times, we flip the second fraction, which will be 1/2. So this becomes 1/2 times 1/2. 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4, so my answer is 1/4. A helpful way to remember keep, change, flip. Think of the second fraction as a door. You flip it so that you can multiply through. Also, practice with simple numbers first, like halves and thirds, before moving to larger numbers. Congratulations, you've just mastered dividing fractions, the last big hurdle in basic fraction operations. Multiplication and division of fractions are now tools you can use confidently. Keep practicing, and remember, every small step you take builds strong math skills. You're doing amazing. Great job.